I'm in the meeting.
Council meeting to order.
No,
Virtual council,
no, I'm in the meeting now, baby.
virtual council meeting on Monday, the 18th of May. If you have a cell phone, please turn it on silent or vibrate.
Oh, let me do
And we
that.
will observe a moment of silence.
Oh, hey, you, I want to talk to you, but I can't now. I'm on. No, wait.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the
United States of America,
and
to the
the
republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ms. Domingo, would you read the roll, please?
Councilmember Clark,
Here,
Here.
Smith,
Here,
Waller,
Here.
Spicer,
Here.
Williamson,
Here.
and Mayor Atchison.
Here. Okay. First order of business is approval of the agenda. May I have a motion?
So moved.
support,
Are there any proposed additions, deletions, or other changes? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
aye,
Aye.
Aye.
And agenda is approved. We have no presentations or recognitions. We have no public hearing this evening. Next is the public comments on agenda items. Who do we have with us tonight for public comments, Chief?
Garrett Brown.
Can you hear me?
yes, sir.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Just three quick things. I think the clerk sent out a resolution regarding the rec department in a partnership with the YMCA and kids and stuff. And I guess there's just two recommendations of the council. So one, the council rules, which were enforced against Councilmember Lawler, I want to say last time. I don't think if you put something on the agenda after that deadline, it can't be acted on. So I think for consistency's sakes, I think the council shouldn't actually take an up or down vote on that. And then also in terms of the long run for that, I know there was a recreation committee put together. I haven't kept up with that, but I'm always cautious because it has been the pattern in the city that's always come back to harm us is to give external entities, organizations, control over local institutions. And in the long run, that's always seemed to harm the community. So I think that's something the council should consider. Number two, the Hanna Street rename. I'm curious, is this an honorary rename or is this actually a real like postal service level renaming of Hanna Street? Because I think if it's a real rename, I know we have honorary streets for Joe McCracken, who just passed away, and Mr. Former council member Gant. But if it's an actual rename, I think that kind of flies in the face of some of the Albion natives. And I think it shines a light on the kind of divide between the college and the town, because there are definitely people who have spent their entire careers and lives here who have not been afforded that honor. And to my knowledge, I don't think the city actually has a policy about when they afford that honor. Automatically from the top of my head, I could think of, Wes or Les Dick, who are actually model citizens in terms of embodying a great kind of town gown relationship in terms of bridging racial divides, and also Professor Dick being the longest serving faculty member at the college. So this is not anything against President Ditzler, but it's more the council making sure that we're not knee-jerking and giving out recognitions like that we have not given out to other people. And then finally, the citizens speaking as elected officials speaking as citizens. I don't know who put that on there, but I do know that in the MML handbook, there is language in there where it's giving guidance to new elected officials. And it basically says that whether or not you're speaking in a public role or a private role, you have to be aware that anything you say or do could be used as to gauge your, what's the word? Basically to gauge whether or not what you're doing is appropriate. So I think I'm interested in seeing what that discussion's about, but I think, yeah, thank you.
Do we have other public comments tonight, Chief?
Sonia.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hello, good evening. Sonia Brown, 713 Orchard Drive. I wanted to comment on agenda item G, the streets. Upon receiving my council packet, there, the packet that goes out, there wasn't any documentation to support that item. So I emailed my council member and the city manager. The city manager was gracious enough to answer me and follow up with me today with the info. So I wanted to thank you, Mr. McCleary, for that. I urge you all to go back and watch the August 2019 meeting when we voted to approve that Clark Street grant and how that funding would affect First, Second, Third, and Wild Street repair. So agenda item I, anybody with common sense knows the courts have been closed since mid-March, but I'm interested in that update myself because for a council to keep revisiting this item about the special prosecutor for me, without even considering all the other allegations of violations brought to your attention, is a display of revenge politics and discrimination. And then agenda item A, the sensitivity awareness training. Sounds real cutesy. The issue that council is addressing was a racial issue. And I think you need to be bold enough to say it was a racial issue. I also urge you to go beyond just a training. Training is a start, and it's much needed because the issue of racism in Albion, whether we want to face it or not, has been festering for many, many years. It is a cancer in this community. And when cancers are not addressed or treated, they grow and they cause more damage. So I'm asking council to take the actions of Mayor Atchison seriously and go beyond just what's on the agenda under item A. Thank you.
Do we have any other public comments tonight, Chief?
Bob Anderson.
Hello, this is Bob Anderson, 905 Haven Road, and I'm assuming you're able to hear me.
Yes, sir.
Fantastic, thank you. I just wanted to pardon me?
I was saying that they hadn't started the clock yet.
I'll try and keep it really short. I do want to speak in favor of the road renaming on the Albion campus. This is Hanna Street currently from Michigan Avenue to Erie, which doesn't affect any residences. But it is a way to honor a leader in the community who brought the college away from isolation, and a leader who brought us towards owning the responsibilities that Albion College has to its host community. And in the long term, it's a way to remind college leaders, administrators, faculty, and staff that Albion College is a permanent part of the Albion community. Nobody represents that in a better way who's been president of Albion College than Maury Ditzler. And that's why we suggested the naming Ditzler's Way. It also was one of the first actions as president to repave that road at college expense and install the beautiful flowers, which makes the campus more beautiful, but also was just kind of a preview of what Maury hoped to accomplish in helping the whole community flower and grow. So those are my thoughts. Thank you for the time. And during the discussion, if you need me, I'll be listening in.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comments tonight, Chief?
Milton Barnes.
Hello.
Hi, Milt.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Milton Barnes, for the record, and a resident here in the city of Albion now, and calling in support of the renaming of Maury Disler Way. They're on renaming that Hanna Street section. I heard some of the other comments that were made, and let me just say this: as an Albion College grad of 1979, I've been in Albion since 1975, in and out, and recently returned. And in all my years associated with Albion College or the city of Albion, have there not been a person more deserving of the accomplishments of bringing the community of Albion and the college together more as one. And certainly, I think my reputation speaks for itself as to what I've done in that same department. But as far as anyone associated with the college, no one can match what Maury Disler have done in the 7 years as president. And I think the strip that they're talking about renaming in his honor is specifically on the Albion College campus, because as was stated earlier, there's hundreds of people in the history of Albion who you could probably deserve renaming a street or naming a street after them because of all the contributions that were made in the history of Albion. But specifically concerning this era and what Maury Disler have done, I think is deserving. It's a great honor. And I'm glad I had a chance to at least see one president in my lifetime that has done such remarkable work to try to bridge Albion College and the community of Albion as one. That's all I'd say. Thank you.
Do you have any other public comments tonight, Chief?
No, that's all the hands I have up. Oh, wait, I have another one. Mark?
Good evening, council people. My name is Mark Goodman. I'm with the Greenhouse Farms on Elliott Street in Albion. I know I'm not on the agenda tonight, but I have interests in Albion. And I know you guys voted down the switching over from medical to recreational. I just want you to know that Greenhouse Farms is in a bind.
Not on the agenda.
We have no place to go. Medical just doesn't do it for grow and processing. We really need it to be reorganized into a recreational for a grow and for processing. There's 20 to 120, excuse me, 50 to 125 jobs at stake.
Point of order.
Very
Point
important.
of order. It's for agenda items only, right?
That's correct, Councilwoman Lawler. Thank you. Mr. Goodman, there will be an opportunity for you to speak at the end of the council meeting, but Councilwoman Lawler is correct. Your topic is not on the agenda this evening.
Okay, I acknowledge that it wasn't on the agenda, but I have interests in Albion, and I've got $5 million tied up in Albion.
Yeah, there will be three. You will have an opportunity to make whatever public statement you wish at the near the end of the meeting this evening.
Okie doke.
Anybody else, Chief?
No, that's all.
Okay, thank you. On the consent calendar, approval of the regular session minutes from May 4th, 2020. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Support?
Support.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Next item. request approval to adopt resolution 2020-22 to mandate the Albion City Council participate in sensitivity awareness training. May I have a motion?
So move.
Is there support?
Support.
Okay. Discussion. Any council members have comments?
I do, Mayor.
Go ahead, Councilwoman Lawler.
Okay, thank you. I'm happy to see that this is on the agenda. I would ask that we change, if I may, change this resolution from sensitivity awareness to cultural training. And I'd like to ask that more than just the council, I'd like to ask that the department heads also participate. I don't know if I'm able to do that or able to ask Mr. McCleary if he had a problem with all of us, department heads and council, doing this session together, because as I'm reading some of the emails that come through, Mr. McCleary, and help me out, Mr. McCleary, if I'm reading some of your emails wrong, that you were trying to at least reach out to some people to help with cultural issues within the city departments. So if I'm wrong, just correct me and I will step back on it. But that's about it of what I had to, the statements that I would like to make towards that. Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. McCleary, you want to respond to that?
Your Honor, just to state that that there were emails that came through recently with some concerns about the filling of the position for code enforcement officer, the code enforcement officer position, and my follow-up email indicating that we have reached out to the local chapter of the NAACP to help us improve the recruitment efforts to make sure that we are casting the widest net possible in reaching out to all segments of our community when we are recruiting for positions.
So Councilwoman Lawler, I know you made a motion, but would you restate what your amendment is to the current motion?
Okay. To add, to change from sensitivity awareness to cultural training, and to this will to also include department heads that work for the city of Albion.
Can I add, am I on mute?
No.
Councilwoman Spicer.
Can I add a friendly amendment to Councilwoman Lawler amendment, and that is to also include city board chairs and commissions, such as the EDC director perhaps could be invited, as well as the chamber's director. So, because I think it's important to be all inclusive if we're going to do this. And I'm certain an invitation wouldn't be a problem. They may decline or not, but I'd like us to at least extend an invitation to those entities.
So I believe the total motion is to amend the current resolution to refer to it as cultural training and to extend invitations to the chairs of each city commission and board, and to invite through the city manager, director heads. Does that capture your motion, Councilwoman Spicer and Councilwoman Lawler?
Yeah, but
yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jeanette. I'll speak in a minute.
I just think we have to vote on yours and then mine, and then, so we can't do it all in one sweep. Am I incorrect, Shane?
So what you were trying to do was just add a friendly amendment, Councilwoman Spicer. If Marcola accepts that, then it can just be the one amendment altogether. So So as long as Marcola is okay with including the chairs for the boards and commissions in her amendment, then we just have to talk about it as a whole.
I think that's a good idea. So it will at least get the healing process started, you know, within ourselves. And I am aware that, well, I'm just gonna put it out there. My mother used to work for Albion College, and she's retired right now. But she said that they had cultural training up there, but it was the multicultural affairs that did the training for them. So I don't know if we got to do this first and then say who we want to do it. I don't know how it goes, but I was just putting a suggestion out there because I think that's a good start, even with us in between Albion College. It's a way to bridge us together. So I yield. Thank you.
So Councilwoman Lawler has moved to make this amendment to the resolution. There needs to be a second and then discussion.
So moved.
No, it has been moved. Do you support?
So I'm second, support,
Okay.
yes.
Now discussion, Councilwoman Clark.
So for a point of clarity, so if the directors, will they be mandated as well as the council members for as far as the city hall directors, and then the invitation will be sent out to the board members? Is that what we're saying?
No, what currently the way it is worded is invitation to the directors via or through the city manager, since we are not able and should not direct the directors to do anything.
Okay.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion on the amendment to the resolution? Councilwoman Spicer.
Well, no, I guess we're going into discussion after that. I have some comments. Okay. So no, at this point, there's no further amendment to it. Will we be discussing it, or is this the discussion point right now?
This is the discussion point right now on the amended motion.
Okay, then,
Councilman Williamson.
Just wanted to point of order. This is discussion on the amendment and not the resolution, not the main motion.
The motion, yes.
So this is, we've changed a couple of things in the main motion, and we want to accept those changes or not accept those changes.
That's what we're going to discuss here. So Councilwoman Spicer, you have the floor if you have something to discuss about the amendment to the resolution.
I have no comment regarding the amendment to the resolution.
Okay. Any other council member have comments relative to the amendment to the resolution? Okay. Mr. McCleary, do you have anything you wish to say?
I have nothing additional, Your Honor.
All right. So I'm going to ask Ms. Domingo to call the roll, and we're voting on the amendment, which is to revise the name from sensitivity training to cultural awareness training, extend invitations to the department directors and the head of each board and commission for the city. Ms. Domingo, please read the roll.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes.
Spicer,
I was drinking it. I already opened it, sorry.
Yes.
Sorry.
Williamson,
Yes.
and Mayor Atchison.
Yes. Okay. So now we'll have discussion on the amended resolution. Councilwoman Spicer, I believe you had something, or you had points to make?
Well, I guess, yes, thank you. Can you hear me? Let me see. Yes. More, I guess, information, and perhaps I'm probably a bit premature, but in the city manager's opinion, has he worked with any organization entities, groups who have administered a similar or the same type of session in the past. And I guess I was just wondering his thoughts on how he plans to proceed in this regard. And maybe he will let us know as he goes, but I'm just basically curious questions, that's all, comments.
Your Honor, I have worked in organizations where we have had cultural diversity training. So there are resources available out there for this type of training, not only for council members, but for city staff, for other boards and commissions. So there are resources available.
Mayor Pro Tem Williamson.
I want to add that there's a really great organization right here in Albion, Star Commonwealth. They have a training arm, their global training arm that deals not only in trauma and loss, but also racial healing. So I just want to add that as we work towards approving this, when the city is looking at who is going to facilitate this, I hope that we can, of course, keep as much of it local as we can. And sometimes we do have to go outside the city. But I would love for us to consider, if this motion passes tonight, to utilizing some of our local resources and people who are doing this work. I know that in the past, the city has actually sent officers to a few of the trainings offered through Star Commonwealth and their global training network. So, and they do train nationally. They're nationally known for their training. So, and internationally. So I think I just wanted to add that as we move to approve this. I think it's really important that we are going to be calling it cultural sensitivity training. I also think it's really important that we're acknowledging that this is a deficit that some of us have, our community deals with all the time. And I'm hoping that we are going to be moving forward in a positive direction. I yield.
Any other comments by council?
Just
Councilwoman Spicer.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, will the city manager be, well, as he is looking into this and coming up with the different organizations that specialize in this area, will he be coming to council with because I know this training is not going to be free. It would be wonderful if it was, but are we going to be wait for him to bring back figures and numbers, or are we giving him a budget, or just my question?
Okay, so my personal opinion is that this will end up being a contract, so there'll be multiple bids, sources. It'll be presented to council, and we'll take a vote and select one. That's what I believe will take place. Any other council members have comments?
I would just like for the timeline to be reasonable. We're going into the summer months. There's a lot of things that I have to do this summer. So I would like for it to be thorough, but I would like it to not drag out a long time.
Any other comments? Seeing none, Ms. Domingo, please read the roll.
Councilmember Reed,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes.
Spicer,
Yes.
Williamson,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
and Mayor Atchison.
Yes. Okay, next item. Request approval to adopt resolution 2023, a resolution to approve proposal for heavy equipment, noxious vegetation abatement and mowing bid, and to approve the contract for heavy equipment, noxious vegetation abatement and mowing with John L. Hawkins Construction Contractor. May I have a motion?
So move.
Support.
Okay. Discussion. Okay, first question I have is, I have 5 questions. First is, how many bids did the city receive, Mr. McCleary?
We've received 2 bids.
Okay. And Mr. Hawkins was the lowest bid?
Mr. Hawkins was not the low bid. The other contractor that you'll be awarding the small equipment, I believe was the low bid. Director Tracy requested that we award the heavy equipment bid to Hawkins because they have worked with us previously. Mr. Tracy feels more comfortable with this contractor, at least for this year. The other contractor you'll be awarding a bid to will be new to us, so it will give us a year to see how their performance is. And so there may be different recommendations in future years, but Mr. Tracy wanted to retain Hawkins for the heavy equipment bid.
Well, I can appreciate that. Our charter requires us to select the lowest reasonable, realistic bid. What about the lower bid makes you or Mr. Tracy doubt they can perform the work adequately?
I have had no indication that the low bidder could not perform the work, Your Honor.
Okay. Councilwoman Reed.
I know what Mr. Tracy means about Mr. Hawkins doing good work. I've seen some of the work that they've done that has been done very nicely. And it's been what I would call a problem area, but they cleaned it up really good. So.
Okay. Councilman Smith.
I have something, please. I have something.
Yeah, just a moment, Councilwoman Lawler. Councilman Smith.
Okay.
I was just wondering, what is the spread between the two bids?
It was not a large spread between the two. I think
$100, $1,000, $5,000.
I think it was bid on an hourly basis, and I think the hourly rate was something like $1 per hour difference. And if I remember correctly, the minimum charge per job was like a $3 difference, $117 per hour versus per job versus $120 per job. Is John, if I could ask if John Tracy is
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, the reason I made the recommendation is Mr. Hawkins has been doing work for us for several years and has always performed extremely well. The new bid that we had in from the company out of Lansing, there was $1 per hour difference and $2 overall for the minimum cost of abatement. So, as I say, $1 per hour and then $2 for overall. One of the reasons I suggest going with Mr. Hawkins on the heavy is he is proven. He's done good work for us. He's always been on call whenever we need him. Not saying that the other contractor that has bid might not be of the same quality or maybe better, who knows? But that's the thing, we don't know at this point. And with us having the other contractor do the small equipment, it gives us a chance to find out what type of work they do, how reliable they are, and how quick they respond, especially being out of Lansing. So.
Councilwoman Lawler.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just trying to get this right so I can understand it a little bit better. It says for mowing services. So we choosing somebody to mow our lawn, or what are these people doing?
This is Counselor. This is for code enforcement abatement jobs. This is when we have to have someone go in and do vegetation removal on private properties.
Okay. Okay, like to tear down old buildings and stuff? Is that what you're saying?
No, to do mowing and vegetation removal. So weeds, tall grass.
So we can't do this ourselves?
We do not have the staffing to be able to do this work in-house.
Okay, is that because of COVID?
No, it's just because of the amount of staffing that we have.
Oh, so you need some more help, huh?
Well, I think it's more cost effective for us to contract this work out than it would be for us to perform the work.
Mayor Pro Tem Williamson.
I was just actually going to add. So I know I feel like there's been this strict interpretation of the charter to say that we have to go with the absolute lowest bid, but that isn't. I don't think that's the case. And I just wanted to check in with Cullen to kind of clarify for that, because I know that this isn't the lowest bid, but I understand that we are allowed to actually vote for this particular contract. So if Cullen would like to chime in and kind of clarify that for everyone, just so everyone knows that we don't, just because the price is the lowest doesn't mean we have to take it.
Sure. So just for point of clarification, it's actually not, it's not our charter. We have an ordinance as it relates to the award of bids, and it's not just the lowest bidder, it's the lowest responsible bidder. And in determining the lowest responsible bidder, in addition to the price, the city is to consider ability, skill, capacity, and skill to perform the contract, whether the bidder can perform the contract or service promptly, the character, integrity, reputation, judgment, experience of the bidder, quality of performance of previous contracts or services, previous and existing compliance by the bidder with laws and ordinances, sufficiency of financial resources for the bidder, quality, availability, and adaptability of supplies, ability of the bidder to provide future maintenance and services, and the number and scope of conditions attached to the bid. So based on what the manager and the planning director have mentioned, number 4, the quality of performance of previous contracts could be one of the points that the council can consider in deviating from the lowest bid and deeming this particular bidder as the lowest responsible bidder. But I would note for the council that pursuant to that same ordinance, if you do deviate from the lowest bidder, there has to be a statement of reasons placed with their contract.
So we're going to not, if we don't take the lowest bid, we're going to not select the lowest bid, and we're going to have an official statement in the record as to why we did not select them. And so as much as the other contractor, we have experience with them and we're satisfied with their quality of work, we're going to have to cite what it is about this other contractor that makes them not responsible.
Point of clarification, City Attorney Harkness, that was in the contract with the person that we vote. If we vote up this contract tonight, it would be in the contract with them. We would have to cite why we chose them over the lowest bid. I believe that's what I just heard you say, correct?
No, I'm sorry. So it doesn't have to be in the contract. Our ordinance requires, and I'm quoting here, when an award is not given to the lowest bidder, a full and complete statement of the reasons for placing the order elsewhere shall be prepared by the purchasing agent, which is the manager, and filed with the other papers relating to the transaction. So there basically just has to be a written statement from the manager placed with the eventual contract that's entered into and kept on file, saying these are the reasons why we awarded the contract to someone other than the lowest bidder.
Thank you.
Councilman Williamson.
I just want to clarify, is the manager comfortable in providing that statement upon execution of this contract? I'm making the assumption that you are, considering this is the contract you brought to council.
I am comfortable making the statement.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Spicer.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I just wanted to, a thought came to mind is, how long have we been contracting with Mr. Hawkins for this situation?
John, did you want to answer that?
Sure. Mr. Hawkins has basically been doing a heavy vegetation at least 10 years.
How many?
At least 10 years.
Okay, I know that you said we're aware of his work and he does an excellent job, and that's all well and good. And but my thing is, you won't know if another company does a good job unless we try them. So unless we, I don't know how many pennies we're saving, but if we were to contract with someone else, we could always put in a contract that their work will be assessed at a certain point, and if we're unsatisfied, the contract is terminated. So I guess I just don't want us to get stuck with somebody we always use just because we always use them when we may perhaps, and you don't know if somebody else will do a good job if you don't try them. It's just a thought that came to mind, and I thought I'd share it. Because people are getting, we can be a cash cow to people, because I know that Rusty's farm has been doing our trees forever. So they probably just depend on the city for money. So you know what I mean? So we, let's consider other people, even though we know the experience of the people we've used, but we can tailor a contract to fit our needs because we're the ones that pay the money. So if we're unsatisfied after 5-6 months, the contract we can put in there that we can terminate it without cause. I think that gets us out of paying.
It's undoubtedly the council's choice, and the only reason I've gone with this as far as making the suggestion is that Hawkins has taken us out of situations where we've had other contractors that had not performed in a timely manner. And I'm just making the suggestion so we can make sure that we have this work done. The new contractor will be doing the right. If the new contractor proves to be exceptionally good or the same, then I would say next year, if it's rebid, go with the new contractor.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that, Director Tracy. I'm just saying food for thought. That's all.
Yeah, I'm just saying the reason why I suggest
you're the expert here, and I'm just I follow your lead, but it was a thought, and I thought I'd share it. Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Reed.
Is it my understanding, Mr. McCleary, that you said the other person was getting a bid on something different? So we would have the opportunity to see how they could work?
That is correct. The next item on the agenda is awarding a contract to the other company for the small equipment work.
That makes good sense.
Councilwoman Clark.
So I was just saying the same. I was kind of supporting what Councilwoman Spicer was saying. And I understand John saying that we've had other people. If this company was not other people, and I'm kind of curious why we only have 2 people responding for this type of job, because this would be a lucrative income for anybody. So how was it posted, or how long was it posted for us only to see 2 people responding?
The bid process was posted on the Mitten bid system. I don't have the data in front of me to be able to tell you how many contractors were made aware of the bid opportunity. We also publish a notice in the local paper so that local businesses are aware of it. We do require, though, that everybody register on the Mitten bid system and that they obtain the documents from the Mitten bid system so that everybody is responding through the system so we can track everybody. But we can get a report for you on how many companies were notified of the bid opportunity. As you're aware, we only received two bid responses, but we can get you the information on how many companies actually received the invitation to bid, how many downloaded the documents. So that'll give you an idea of how many actually considered bidding on it before we received the 2 bids that we did.
Okay, I would like to know that.
Mr. McCleary, how often do we not select the lowest reasonable bid?
I don't have that data, Your Honor, on this particular type of project or generally.
Generally. It's in an ordinance to pick the lowest responsible bidder. We're not doing
I
that.
could not tell you that, Your
Okay, we're not doing, apparently not going to do that in this case. That wasn't your recommendation. Last time that I recall, because I don't monitor the contracts closely, but the last one that I recall where the city did not select the lowest responsible bidder, we ended up with a catastrophe for a city manager. Mayor Pro Tem Williamson.
Okay, I'm going to provide the absolute opposite response to that. So we've hired a city manager. The city manager has brought forth a contract that he feels comfortable with executing based on the performance of the contractor. It is not in violation of our ordinance if we follow the rules, which he feels comfortable doing. I think we've spent a little too long talking about this particular agenda item, but I'm glad everyone's getting the clarity that they need. I think that if we're being asked to do this as part of our regular operations at the city, I think that I'm in favor of awarding this contract and moving on. Thanks.
Any other comments by council members?
Your Honor, if I could just respond to your concern, because it is a very valid concern. And I raised the same concern with Director Tracy about why we would justify awarding a contract to other than the low bidder. I was satisfied with the director's response and his willingness to split the contract so that we can see how the other contractor who bid, what type of work they do, the quality of their work. But also part of what went into this decision-making process was the fact that administration is very sensitive to the fact that code enforcement services are something that is very important to the city council. We want to make sure that we have contractors who are available and can perform the work in a timely fashion when we need them to do it. And that these are services and actions that are important to the council. So that did go into our consideration when we made the recommendation on awarding the contracts.
Thank you. Any other comments by council? Okay, Ms. Domingo, please read the roll.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes.
Spicer,
Yes.
Williamson,
Yes.
Clark, Councilmember Clark,
Vicky, you're muted.
Muted.
No.
There she got.
Reed,
Yes.
and Mayor Atchison.
No. Okay. Okay, item C, request approval to adopt resolution 2020-24, a resolution to approve proposal for small equipment noxious vegetation abatement and mowing bid and to approve contract for small equipment noxious vegetation abatement and mowing with Lansing Real Green Lawn Care. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, discussion. I do note in the read ahead, the document you wrote up that you did say that this is the lowest bid, and I appreciate that. Any other comments by council? Seeing none, Ms. Domingo, please read the roll.
Councilmember Lawler,
Yes.
Spicer,
Yes.
Williamson,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
and Mayor Atchison.
Yes. Okay. Next, item D, request approval to adopt resolution 2020-25, a resolution approving the Michigan Transportation Economic Development Fund Category A grant agreement between the Michigan Department of Transportation and City of Albion for the reconstruction of North Clark Street and authorizing the execution of the agreement. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Support?
Support.
Okay, discussion. Comments by council. Councilwoman Clark.
So I remember it's, what Sonia was bringing up during her, when she was talking about the motions that we made back last year about Clark Street and the fact that it would probably take some of the funding away from the 3 streets that we're looking, well, the 4 streets that we're looking at in item G. And I want to know if that's still the situation, and if so, how much are we looking at?
Mr. McCleary.
So the decision that was made when the council approved the filing of this grant application for the North Clark Street project, I think at that time the council was presented with three projects, potential projects to submit for funding. The North Clark Street project was selected, but some of the council members at that time expressed a concern about the condition of streets within precinct 1. And ultimately the city council, as part of its motion to approve submitting the grant application for the North Clark Street project, included an amendment to the motion that the council expressed its intent to make First, Second, Third, Wild, and Hartwell Streets a priority for the 2020 street improvement projects. So the funding for the North Clark Street project includes $200 and some thousand contributed from the city toward the overall project. A portion of the project, and I believe the city's contribution for North Clark is 78.9% of the construction costs over and above what the grant amount is. The county is contributing 21.1% of the total for its share of the project. So the city is contributing just under $300,000 toward the construction costs. Now, anytime we allocate funds for a street improvement project, that means that funding is not going toward another project. So that is correct. That by allocating the funding for the North Clark Street project, it is money that will not be spent on any other streets, including First, Second, Third, Wild, or Hartwell. There is an item on the agenda later down on your agenda to consider applying for grant funding for those streets in precinct 1 and committing to funding for those streets, or at least most of those streets, and we'll have that discussion later. So yes, basically allocating the funding for this project takes our local funding away from other streets. If I could just kind of add to that though, because we were able to receive $340,000 in funding for North Clark Street under the Category A program, it does provide us with the opportunity, though, to accelerate our program in some other areas. Normally, this $340,000 would be costs that we would have to incur, but we've received a grant to offset that cost. So, you can look at it one way. Yes, it moves other projects lower down in the priority list, but on the other hand, it accelerates our overall street improvement program by leveraging $340,000 in grant funding that otherwise we would have to pay for locally.
Councilwoman Spicer.
Well, I guess I'm thinking, I guess I don't know how this project got to this point. I know when I think it was Haley and Director Mead and maybe Tracy presented to council regarding this grant, and we approved it, but we approved them submitting the grant, but that we approved it conditionally, that it would not be taking funds, if my memory serves me correctly now, from First, Second, Third, and Wild Street. First, Second, Third, Hartwell and Wild Street. I don't remember Hartwell, but I guess it's in there. So, and then the next thing I know, we're awarded the grant, and there's an announcement in the paper saying, yay, Albion has won, and this grant, and they're contributing $300,000, and it's coming from this. So at that point, it's like, whoa. So I guess it never came back to us for us to say, hey, we got this grant. We applied and we received it. Do you want to move forward with it, or I guess I'm a little disheartened that it got to that point before it was on the public, and it was made aware to the community before we were aware that it was approved, that the grant was approved, and and no one told us that the monies would be coming from the pot for First, Second, Third, Hartwell and Wild Street. We had to ask questions and later it was determined, yes, it would be coming from that. So I don't know. I feel bad that, that section of Albion, that community, seems to always get the short end of the stick. And I still feel like it's happening now. So while I'm happy about the grant and that area being repaired and all that, I'm at the same time disheartened with how it's going to affect the other streets. And I understand we are applying for a grant for those streets, but applying and getting and when if we get it are still questions that are unanswered. So I'm torn. Okay, but those are my comments.
Okay, so one point of clarification, there has never been, nor is there right now, a pot of money or an amount of money that's been allocated for those other streets. So it's how I understood what you said is money was being taken away from those streets. It's coming out of the street fund, but not taken away from any particular street. Councilman Williamson.
Well, that's your opinion. You let me state mine how I want to state it. There is monies, is what I was saying, that was in the street fund that we thought were going to be used for those streets. So however you want to term it, that's up to you. I'm terming it how I want to. We thought there was money there for that. And so I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to stand with that.
Councilman Williamson.
Oh, I want to add a couple of short things. So the First, Second, Third, Hartwell, those streets have been on council's priority list since before I was on council. And so this has gone through a few iterations of not getting done. So I want to make sure that we're hearing our council members who are saying, we've talked about it, and we haven't done it. And I want to hear and I want to acknowledge that frustration in a really big way. And then I also want to acknowledge that this grant also happened at a very difficult time in the city. So if you recall, when this grant came before council to approve to apply for it, we were in the throes of a pretty complex situation with a former city manager. The council was full of antics that were taking place in the community and on council, and we were distracted, as everybody was with council at that point in time. So, and this is one of the like bright and shiny moments. We were able to leverage state money to help us with a certain street because it was Knopf was adding jobs. This is why this grant was given to us. Knopf expanded, added jobs. The state of Michigan offered money to repair the infrastructure around those types of places adding jobs. And so council said, yes, please, let's see if we can get the money. One thing I want to note is at the time when we were talking about this, we thought that the money may have had to come out of fund balance or something. We didn't know where this money was going to come from. Well, it's now a year later, and we are going to be receiving over $1 million, or maybe have received over $1 million in Act 51 money for 2020. So if you note in the council packet, this money isn't coming out of fund balance. It's actually coming right out of our Act 51 dollars, and I believe in the street improvement fund. I also would like to say on behalf of members and you guys who are really here feeling the burn about First, Second, Third Streets is maybe it's time that we ask, maybe we need to take yet another vote and make it a priority and ask that the city put this at the top of their list. I'm really excited to hear that there's a grant opportunity being pursued for First, Second, and Third Street. And I know that while there's not a promised pot of money somewhere for First, Second, Third Street, I acknowledge there's no existence of a promised pot of money. This is a promise that has been made over and over again by council to address those areas. And so maybe now it's really time is of the essence to make a promise made as a promise kept. And so while acknowledging that we need to move forward this particular project to take advantage of those resources that we might not otherwise get, in the same token, we need to also take responsibility for saying, well, you know what, First, Second, Third, and Hartwell, those are important streets and they need to get done, and we're going to make them a top priority. And again, as I've learned over school board and time on council, we are all about setting the priorities for the city and the policy. So if we say and vote and say, well, get it done, then I have confidence that the city administration will bring forward a plan to address those streets. And I would hope that we would keep them accountable for that. I yield.
Councilwoman Clark.
So I understand everything that Shane just said. However, this has been an ongoing situation before I was even on council. And I know that my people in my precinct is very upset with the fact that nothing has happened since several years ago. And here we are getting ready to spend money for an area that has been paved during that time when those areas in that precinct didn't get anything done. So because of that, I cannot support this. I understand that we've got grant funding from somewhere else and it's helping to pay for this, but because of the fact that this area has been looked over time and time again, no, I cannot support giving approval to this adoption, and I yield.
So Mr. McCleary. Mr. McCleary, in your time doing municipal management, have you ever experienced getting awarded a grant of several $100,000 and then not taking it? Does that have any future impact on future grant applications?
I don't think it has an impact on future grant opportunities as long as the reason for rejecting the grant funding is reasonable and rational. And so, of course, priorities change. And I know even today during our meeting with MDOT and the Michigan Department of Treasury, they were talking about how projects may have to be reprioritized because of the financial situation of local communities. That would be reasonable and rational. I think, and only the council could determine what you think is reasonable and rational reasons for rejecting the grant funding. But I think if MDOT looks at it as reasonable and rational, the reason for rejecting it, I don't think that affects future opportunities. I think if MDOT looks at it as not reasonable, there is the potential that it could impact us.
Councilman Lawler.
Okay, thank you. This is really tough. I feel like we have made first, second, third, Hartwell and Wild Streets a low priority, and it's been out there that we were gonna say we was gonna try to get those roads fixed. So I'm having a hard time right now. And another reason why I'm having a hard time is because we just did North Street to help the traffic flow to Clark Street. So I'm just not understanding why we have to go from B Drive to Clark Street. I think that's what we're discussing. But we just did North Street for to have traffic flow out there, and so I just want to make sure my word is bond. You know, I'm real sad that that first, second, and third is a low priority when we just had North Street done to help the factories out that way towards Clark Street. Don't get me wrong, it's bad, but we've been making promises to people and we don't keep our word all the time. And I do understand that circumstances do change, but this is like an ongoing thing. And I'm just I'm kind of torn between the two. And I'm happy that we got the grant, but if we have first, second, and third street as a priority, it's like the priorities change. Now we trying to work on North Street and then worry about first, second, and third. When I felt like first, second, and third should have been handled and got off the table, and then we move forward. We got a habit of leaving stuff on the table and moving on to another project. And I just really have noticed that we do that, and I'm saying we because it is us. And we need to check ourselves. I think so. We need to make sure our word is bond to people when we give it. Thank you.
Further comments by council? Councilman Williamson.
I just want to personally commit to my fellow council members, especially Councilwoman Spicer, Councilwoman Clark, Councilwoman Lawler, that wants to move past this grant funding, that I want to make sure that I join with you all in making sure that we stay accountable for the first, second, third, Hartwell and Wild Streets. So I want to make sure that we do make them a priority, that it is something that in my remaining time on council, I want to make sure we get it done. So thank you all for your efforts in making sure that we keep this top of mind.
Councilwoman Spicer.
You're muted. Okay.
You guys in here on my ahs and but anyway, City Manager McClary, how we're applying for the grant that we later on the agenda for Hartwell, first, second, and third street. How soon? Give me a time frame, because you know, as it stands, it's looking like this may not be a passing issue. And I guess I just want to I don't like the idea of losing money, but I also like the idea of us keeping our word and being true to it. Because, so help me, convince me, try to help me with first, second, and third. How soon could they see apply for this grant?
My understanding is that the award of funding would take place around October of this year. And if that is the case, we could see those streets or the majority of them done next summer.
Councilwoman Reed.
Okay, so if we vote on approval for the resolution for Clark Street, that takes the money away off the table for anything for first, second, and third, right?
Mr. McCleary, would you answer that?
The funding for North Clark Street would utilize the Act 51 funds and or the local street millage funds for Clark Street. We collect about $275,000 each year from the local street improvement millage fund tax levy. And that's about what we're contributing to the North Clark Street project, is just under $300,000. So yes, it is a priority. It is setting priorities based on a number of criteria, which we will be talking about more later this year, coming up with objective criteria moving forward on how we handle street improvement projects, so that we are utilizing that criteria in determining the priorities for projects moving forward. I can tell you that the decision to move forward with the North Clark Street project, to apply for the grant funding, to commit to doing the project if we receive the grant funding, was a decision that was made 2 years ago. So this action that we are requesting tonight is in keeping with the decisions that were made by council 2 years ago. Also, in the spirit of keeping with part of the motion from 2 years ago, we are also tonight moving forward with trying to apply, getting approval from council to apply for Category B grant funding for some of the other streets, First, Second, Third, Wild, and Hartwell. Although I don't think we can accommodate all of them at one time with the funding. But again, I'll be talking in more detail about that when that item comes up later on the agenda. So we are trying to make good on the promises that were made back in 2018. And that is to make those streets a priority. And so we are trying to move forward with those.
Any other comments or questions by council?
Yeah, I have something, please.
Go ahead, Councilwoman Lawler.
Okay, thank you. Does it look bad for us to ask for help? Because it is going to benefit those that are out that way. And like I said, we did just do North Street. So is it appropriate to do that or no? I'm just asking a question, just throwing some stuff out there to try to help make it better.
So could you clarify, is it appropriate to ask for help from who for what?
Is it appropriate to ask businesses for help with this project that will benefit them? Because like I said, we just did North Street to help benefit the factories out that way. So I'm just asking Cullen or city manager or either mayor or mayor pro temp, is it appropriate for us to ask?
Well, I think if I could, Your Honor, respond to that first.
Please.
It is appropriate for us to request and to expect that property owners are going to contribute toward the cost of local street improvements. The way to do that is through, in addition to the street improvement millage that we levy every year, it is allowable for us to specially assess property owners for a portion of the street improvement project costs. For this project, we are a little late in being able to do that because we would have to go through a special assessment process, and it's a pretty involved process. First, we would have to go through and have a needs public hearing after we've set up the district boundaries, have a needs hearing, hear from the property owners as to whether or not they feel that it is a project that is a need. And then the council would determine that there is a need. We would move forward with the project. We would have a second public hearing on the special assessment role after we have gone through and assessed the costs or a portion of the cost back to the property owners, and we'd have to determine the criteria we're going to use to assess those costs. So it's a long involved process. And if we want to complete this project this year, we would not be able to do that and go through a process like that.
Well, see, that's why I was asking for some updates and you know, to try to help get us prepared for this particular situation right here, because now you saying that we could do that when we could have discussed it a while back about if that's what we wanted to do if we received this grant. I have been asking for it, you know, give us some update so that we are not rushed into doing so. But now I feel like we're being rushed to do so. But maybe that's another subject. But I'm really torn about this, and I'm really kind of upset that the grant funding was sought for the North Clark Street, but it hadn't been sought for first, second, and third, when first, second, and third was a priority for 2020. But you know, what do I know?
Councilwoman Reed.
Okay, so if then when it comes to first, second, third, and Hartwell, is it going to be that the people that live in that area are going to have to put forth the money to fix that street? Or a portion of the money to fix that street?
I would not recommend that we do that for these projects. But as part of the discussion that we need to have this fall is going forward with any new projects that we would identify after this point. We need to determine how we are going to fund projects, the criteria that we're going to use to determine priority. And it's got to be a comprehensive program and criteria that we are going to apply to all projects moving forward. Fairly, uniformly, and consistently, and in a way that is sustainable for the long term. But if the council moves forward with the grant application for the streets in Precinct 1 and adopts a resolution to move forward with that grant application, my anticipation is that these funds would be taken from our Act 51 or local street millage funds. Did I answer your question, Councilor?
I think you did. I just want to make sure, because this area has been waiting for a while. They have been waiting, and they have been promised, and they have waited, and they've been promised. And I just really think that it should not end up that they have to do their own street after all of the years of waiting for that to happen. So you know, and I see the necessity of doing the Clark Street, but I also know the necessity of being fair with our own community. Because that is a business community. This is a community of homeowners and people.
Councilwoman Spicer.
Thank you. Given that we want to make first, second, third, Hot Run Wild a priority, how do we do that in the face of, we have a street committee? I mean, if council wants to put a future agenda item, put forth some resolution with regard to these streets, which I guess we should have, and I thought we did, but apparently we didn't. We just said we made a priority and not actually made it a valid, legit black and white thing. So how, moving forward, how can we do that? Because I guess I need some assurance to support, to support this. I'm, you know, in the face of, you know, our street committee. How does council make sure that this happens for First, Second, Third, and Wild Street?
Is that question directed to me, Counselor?
I believe so, yes. I think
Okay,
you're probably the most
so
appropriate person.
so I think a good first step was 2 years ago when the council adopted, the previous council adopted as part of its motion, determining that its intent was to make these streets the next priorities in the street improvement program. That was an important first step. An important second step would be for council to adopt the resolution that's coming up later on your agenda to move forward with seeking grant funding for those streets. And if we are awarded a grant, those streets, most of them, and I say most of them because, again, we've got to get into further discussion on that. We've got to get off this topic. But we could see construction on a number of those streets as early as next year if the council approves moving forward with it. But I do have to reiterate with the council. If you decide that you want to forego $340,000 in grant funding for a street that you are responsible for maintaining and repairing, you're going to, locally, I say you, locally, we are going to have to pay that $340,000 ourselves at some point. So you will have made a decision that we are going to shift more of the cost burden to our local taxpayers rather than accepting this grant funding. Ultimately, this grant funding, this $340,000, allows us to move ahead more expeditiously with other projects than we would otherwise be able to. So I hope that helps.
Councilman Williamson.
I just wanted to reiterate, I want to reiterate two things. One, we can, by resolution, especially by voting up the grant for First, Second, Third, Hartwell, and Wild Streets, we're saying those are a priority. We can go even further at another council meeting and set the tone through another resolution saying these need to be done, you know, as soon as possible. We need to get a plan in order. We can require that. And I think the city manager was very nice when he said if we turn down $340,000 from the state, that it might not look bad depending on the reasons. I'm going to go a little step further and say it's going to look really bad. When the state of Michigan, when any other grantor funder looks at their grantees, they're going to look at your funding history and what you've done with money that has been given to you. And if you've returned it, essentially saying we don't need it, that does look bad. So for our future and for our stability and for getting more resources to support not only the business community, but especially our residential property, residential homeowners on First, Second, Third, Wild, and Hartwell, I think it's good to vote yes on this. And then when we get into discussion on the next one, I think it's an obvious yes to seek grant funding, especially if we can bring more resources to the community and not have to spend as much out of our own pockets for all projects. And for as long as I've been in Albion, this is how our big projects get done. It's a patchwork of funding. It's some from the city, sometimes some from the county, some from the state. And that's just this is how we get stuff done. And then the other piece related to the business and this whole conversation about assessments, the whole reason this money was made available is because there was an economic upturn and there were more jobs being provided to Albion residents at Knopf. And so the state of Michigan said, okay, look, this business entity provided more jobs. You're going to have more travel. There's going to be more people coming into your community. We want to help you fix that road up so that cars, so that business can be done and that people can get to work. So I want to be really, really supportive. I want this to be positive. This was, I think, a tougher conversation than what we all anticipated. But again, I stand firm with my council members that First, Second, Third, Hart, and Wild are immediate priorities. And I also say that we need to not leave this money on the table and put our community at risk with future funding. So with that, I yield.
Any further comments by council? Okay,
Yes, I have one.
Councilwoman Lawler.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Oh good Lord. I just gotta reiterate, North Street was done to have traffic. And I understand that they are, you know, supplying a little bit more jobs, and have been consistent with it. So that's why I was asking, I mean, I know we got limited funding. I do not want to see $340,000 go to waste. But that's why I was asking. I mean, can the businesses help us out some kind of way? Or, I mean, because I don't want it to go to waste, but I don't want to sacrifice the people's way of living to for some money. I mean, I don't really want to do that.
Councilwoman Spicer.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were done.
I am. I'm done.
No, I was just going to say, oh yeah, just going to say, this is my last comment and I'm done with this subject, but I think that, yeah, I yield. We can move to a vote if we need to. Thank you.
Ms. Domingo, please read the roll.
Councilmember Spicer.
With a heavy heart, yes.
Williamson.
Yes.
Clark.
No.
Reed.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Lawler.
No.
And Mayor Atchison.
Yes. Okay, next item. Request approval to schedule a public hearing for Monday, June 1st, 2020 at 7 p.m. on the request from Albion College dated April 8th, 2020 to rename a portion of North Hanna Street and South Hanna Street to Ditzler Way, after which time the city council will consider the request and to direct the city clerk to provide proper public notice of the hearing. May I have a motion?
Yes.
Support.
Okay, seconded. Comments by council members. Councilwoman Reed.
I think this is a very good idea. I think Dr. Ditzler did a lot for Albion. I like the Albion Fellows Program. I like the other. I mean, he put the kids in the neighborhoods and in the businesses here working, which I think was really, really great because it gave them experience on what they were going to have to do after they left college, but it also helped us. And that's really about the first time. I know some of that was started back before when the other president was here, but he just really increased it a lot. I enjoyed working with him. I think he was absolutely fantastic. I liked the way he interacted with the citizens of the city and was involved. And I think it's really worthwhile that this happens.
Other council members? Councilman Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. I believe we all received on city email a letter from Eric from the Chamber of Commerce, basically stating that he did not support this. I've also received communication from our city historian, Frank Pasick, that this probably would not be the best idea. I do have to go along with those reasonings, mainly because there are a lot of citizens in Albion who, if you're going to start renaming streets, there are a lot of people who have, as people will tell you, been here all their life and have done some great work in and around Albion. Please believe I have nothing but respect for Dr. Ditzler. He is, I've had the opportunity to work with him on many committees and councils, and enjoyed his company and his counsel as well. But he's a gentleman who's been here for 5 years. Not really sure about establishing residence while he was in Albion, because he didn't look upon this as a permanent location for himself, because he's moving back to his farm, I believe, in Indiana. And it's, again, I appreciate what Dr. Disler did, but he did so in line of his job as the president of the university. Thank you so much for your service, sir. But I don't believe that warrants renaming a street.
Councilman Smith, can I clarify? I believe the email you're referring to was not from Eric at the Chamber of the Commerce. It was from another resident. First name is Eric, but it was not Eric Orley.
My bad, thank
I
you.
have some.
Councilwoman Lawler.
Okay, thank you. I just want to first off say that Mr. President Disler he's in my precinct. Haven't had much interaction with him, and was beginning to work on a couple projects on a couple of the surrounding areas that surround Albion College, and I'm just disappointed that I missed out talking to him and finishing up some things that we had talked about. But you know, life moves on, and things happen, circumstances change. So I do appreciate him investing in our community, and he has been a good asset to the community. But I just want to say that are we able to do an honorary? Would anybody be against having an honorary, like it just be named in honor of him, but not change the name, like the MLK? We coming from the highway, Eaton Street, we call it MLK Highway or something, but in honorary of Dr. King. So would it be a problem to suggest that we can have a suggestion to do the same with this?
And I guess
this request is for honorary. They want to actually change the name, I believe.
Yeah, that's why I was asking, can we do an honorary?
Okay, this asks for request approval to schedule a public hearing for Monday. So what we have to do now is just give our approval to have a public hearing.
Correct.
Okay, let's do that.
Gotcha.
So moved.
Councilman Williamson.
So I wanted to weigh in. I think, of course, we should approve the public hearing. I think that you know, colleges, universities, businesses, institutions around the city find special ways to recognize their leaders and people who've done great work for them. I'm very interested in having a public hearing from the college. You know, how that works. Is it honorary? Is it a full-on name change? Hearing from the city, what is the cost? Who's going to pay for it? I think having a public hearing to hear about that and hear what people feel about that in the community is important. I also want to recognize that we always say at council how important Albion College is to the community. We always say Albion College and the city are, you know, we have to be together. That doesn't mean we have to be in lockstep with each other. It doesn't mean we have to be in love every day. But this is one of those town and gown things. And I think it's important that we at least have the public hearing about it, feel how citizens and people from the college feel about this, and then make a really educated decision on it and really consider the impacts. It's not going to change addresses. It's not going to, this is from what I understand, almost honorary in nature anyway, similar to the MLK way. There might be some sort of sign that gets put up that says, you know, Ditzler Way. There might be something there on the college campus that does that. But again, I feel like we shouldn't just automatically have a knee-jerk disdain for this. I think it's good to have the public hearing and hear it out and then make a pretty nice informed decision that way. That is how we can maintain a good, healthy relationship with the college, which during Dr. Ditzler's tenure has really been part of one of the catalysts for change and for downtown development and for improvement in our community. And so I think at least having the public hearing is important. So I want to vote this up tonight. I encourage all of you to vote it up as well. And then on the other side of this, I too read the email from Mr. Kraus in our inbox today, and I did take that seriously. And I think that this does not always have to be adversarial at council. It doesn't have to be either or. It can be and. So Dr. Ditzler gets Dr. Ditzler Way, and Mr. Gant gets Gant Avenue, and so gets whatever. I mean, if we feel like we are not recognizing community leaders enough, if we feel like we're not supporting those who have sacrificed themselves for our community, or sacrificed resources for our community, this does not have to be an either or. This can be both and. And I really want to encourage everyone to maybe turn around their thinking about this just a little and say, okay, if we're going to, this is the request that's before us now. That doesn't mean that there can't be more requests to make sure we honor other people in our community. And I would be supportive of that as well. So just kind of encouraging council to kind of think of this in a less adversarial terms and more of let's do more of this type of thing. I'd rather come to council and talk about naming bridges and park benches and things for people who do really great in our community than fighting over some of the stuff that we fight over sometimes. So again, encouraging everyone just to kind of change their thinking a little bit as we go forward. And I'm supportive of this public hearing and generally supportive of the idea of honoring a college president who's done good work. Thank you.
Councilwoman Clark.
I resent the fact that Shane is thinking just because somebody voices their opinion, it's a fight. I think everybody has the right to voice their opinion about how they feel about whatever is on the agenda. It's not necessarily a fight or somebody trying to have it an either or. It's just a matter of them voicing their opinion.
Are there any other further comments by council? Okay. Councilwoman Spicer.
No, wait, no.
Okay. All right. All those in favor of scheduling a public hearing for Monday, June 1st, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Opposed.
Say again?
I oppose.
Okay. All right. Okay, next item, item F, request approval to adopt resolution 2020-27, a resolution to approve extending the deadline for filing payment of quarterly and monthly local income tax. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Support?
Support.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Domingo, please read the roll.
Councilmember Williamson,
Yes.
Clark,
We're voting for F, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Lawler,
Councilman Waller?
Thought I heard a
Said
faint
yes.
yes.
Thank
There
you.
go.
Councilmember Spicer,
Yes.
and Mayor Atchison.
Yes. Okay, item G, request approval to adopt resolution 2020-28, a resolution for submission of Michigan Transportation Economic Development Fund, Category B, application for First, Second, Third, Hartwell, and Wild Streets. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Okay, discussion? Okay, seeing no comments by council, Ms. Domingo, please read the roll.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes.
Spicer,
Yes.
Williamson,
Yes.
and Mayor Atchison.
Yes. Okay. Item H, request approval to adopt resolution 2020-29, a resolution to approve a temporary moratorium on the imposition of late fees for untimely water payments imposed pursuant to ordinance 86-137. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Okay, discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Domingo, would you please read the roll?
Councilmember Reed,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Lawler,
Yes.
Spicer,
Yes.
Williamson,
Yes.
Clark,
yes,
and Mayor Atchison.
Yes. Okay. Item I, update on special counsel to prosecute Sonia Brown for charter violation. City Attorney, would you give us an update, please?
Certainly. Mr. O'Keefe was the individual that I had previously recommended to council. He has accepted to represent the city as special assistant city attorney on this matter. He has provided a letter of engagement. I have provided him with the relevant materials relative to this case. I spoke with him early this morning. He indicated to me that he should have a charging decision by the end of this week.
Okay. Any questions by council? Okay, thank you, City Attorney. Item J, update on collection from Latanya Rufus. City Attorney.
So if the council recalls, we filed this last year in August. We obtained a judgment in October of last year. I attempted 2 non-periodic bank garnishments at the banks that we believe that she was using when she was here. Neither of those were successful because the accounts had been closed. I had previously scheduled the case for what's called a debtors exam, which is basically an order to appear to provide information about assets and accounts and things of that nature. That was originally scheduled for early this year. It was because of the state of emergency, it was adjourned. Because the state of emergency was extended, it was adjourned again. And because the state of emergency was extended, it was adjourned again. Right now, our current date for that debtors exam is July 10th. My assumption is that she'll probably fail to appear, at which time we'll request a bench warrant for her arrest. She's already got 2 felony warrants out of the district court as it relates to the embezzlement charges. This will just be an add-on bench warrant. So until I can get her back in the state here, there's not much I can do. But we'll continue with the process.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello. Okay, thank you. Do we have a current address for Miss Rufus? And if we do, how can we enforce to go get her? Or
So
we can't do that?
I do have an address where we believe she's residing in Dalton, Illinois. I have spoken with the local police department and alerted them to the fact that there are 2 felony warrants for her, and that in speaking with our county prosecutor, David Gilbert, that they will extradite her. Getting them to actually go and pick her up is another story. I've asked them to do that professional courtesy, and as of yet, there's been no response.
Okay, can you at least try again and see if they respond? And thank you.
And absolutely.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll move to item K, update on the sidewalk committee. City Manager McCleary, other than the fact they met, can you tell us anything?
Mayor, they've held 3 meetings so far. I should say we have held 3 meetings so far. We've discussed a number of potential options as recommendations to the council on how to use the sidewalk program fund monies. The committee is meeting again on May 26th to continue their discussion. I am hoping at that meeting we can finalize our recommendations to the city council.
Thank you. Questions by council? Okay. Item L, discussion when council members can speak as citizens. I believe Councilwoman Reed asked for this to be on the agenda.
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to briefly tell us what the question is or what you want to discuss?
Okay, I just want to know, there's things that come up that sometimes, because you're a taxpayer, you feel like you have something, you can say things, but because you're on the city council, it's read as though you are a official of the city. So you should not be saying. So at what point in time and of what can we talk about if we've got a question about something as our own person? Lynn Reed, 306 West Chestnut, citizen.
City Attorney, would you handle that one?
Sorry, I forgot I was muted.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, as a general concept, I think it's to the extent that council members are obviously acting in their role as a council person, whether it's at a meeting, signing an email with your official title, things like that, lend weight to the fact that you're acting in capacity as a council member. But the fact that you're a council member does not preclude you from, I'll just refer to it as participating in the political process. You can, individuals can endorse each other. They can, lodge a complaint as a citizen. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, as long as you're making it clear that you're acting in your private capacity and using your private resources, as opposed to, like I said, signing things with your official title. I wouldn't, if you want to speak as a private individual, don't use your city email account, things like that. Does that help?
That helps.
Okay. All right, item M, request approval resolution 2020-29, a resolution to amend the fiscal year 2020 budget and to authorize the execution of a public services agreement with Battle Creek YMCA and Kids and Stuff Museum to provide for the 2020 Albion Summer Recreation Camp Program. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Is there support? Is there support for the motion?
I'll support it because I'd like to hear what Councilmember Williamson has to say about it. I'm not saying I'll agree, but I do want to hear him out if this is his agenda item.
Okay, the floor is yours, Councilman Williamson.
Good evening, Council. So this is been something that's been long in the works since COVID-19 kind of has taken everybody by storm all over the country. But here in Michigan, since about March, some history, the Battle Creek Family YMCA helped provide relief camps for essential workers in Albion for about the first month of the COVID response, at which point it wasn't needed anymore. People had become able to manage children at home based on their employment situation and unemployment payments being made. And so that problem took care of itself. And because we operated those, because they operated here in the city, the relief camps, they are essentially the only entity that can provide recreational programming in Albion for the foreseeable future as we start to figure out phases of getting back to work and back to the new normal in the economy. So what the Battle Creek Family YMCA is proposing is to essentially, they're called recreation camps for pre-K to 5th or 6th grade. They will essentially partner with, so this isn't just been a silo. They've worked with Larry Williams, the rec department, with Darwin McCleary, our city manager, with Kids and Stuff Children's Museum, which was the site for the relief camps, and now would be the hub for the recreation camps for the summer, to pull this together to provide people who are going back to work actually rather quickly, it seems at the moment, as we kind of as we phase other parts in, the opportunity for their kids to have some place to go and have some recreation programming throughout the summer. So this would include classes, sports. It would include free play, and the description, the one-page description you have really kind of encompasses what they're doing. And because they're kind of building this as they go, they didn't want to contract with the city for the full price of the program, since they're going to include other partners that are being approached. So again, this is open to everyone in the city. This is essentially just like Peapods. They'll be employing locals here in Albion, students and or teachers who have been part of that program. They've given us that assurance with Mr. McCleary and Larry Williams. And it's basically, they're planning on about 40, but can scale up to the need that grows over the summer. And so this would provide continual Monday through Friday summer programming for children across Albion at no cost to them. So we are patching, the YMCA and Kids and Stuff are patching together funding to make it so that nobody has to pay, because we know that everyone is in a very different financial situation than they were 2 months ago. So that's how I wanted to open the discussion. I think there are a couple things that people are, I've heard some concerns. We could not, we don't have to bid this out, because this is essentially the only group that can provide this service. They've been allowed to under the governor's orders every iteration, and will continue to be, because they have done this expertly in Battle Creek as well. So they did this in Albion at the beginning, but they've been continually in service in Battle Creek, providing these types of services for kids all over the Battle Creek area and in the most vulnerable communities. So there was not a need to necessarily bid this out. And again, this is a contract with the city to provide a service that is open to all. So we made this as simple as we possibly could. There are a lot of people who are rooting to make sure that kids have things to do this summer. And if we don't have this, we don't have a summer program. Our recreation department is closed for the foreseeable future, not offering programming. So our partnership in contracting with these entities to do this work means that the city of Albion can say, I'm helping to provide programming for our youth this summer. And I think that was, and for me, that was really important. I'll shut up now and let other people ask questions and or discuss.
Where is this happening at?
The hub will be at Kids and Stuff. They have a couple of classrooms and then of course that open floor space, but they are working with Marshall Public Schools and with other entities in the city to be able to provide like movies, outdoor activities, because the park is right there at Kids and Stuff. When it's raining, of course, they'll be inside. And then they have meals. They will have meals delivered on site. They've become a summer feeding site for the summer feeding program. So nobody has to worry about food. Everybody will have food in their bellies when they are at this program.
Okay, Councilwoman Clark.
You said there's other entities. So is our recreation department being involved in this in any form?
So Mr. Cleary, you may want to chime in. I think some of the staff will come from.
Yes, the recreation department will be providing staffing that will assist with this program.
I have one, please.
Councilwoman Lawler.
What does the rec department committee have to say about this? Have we talked to them about it?
Who was that?
The recreation committee. Didn't we get didn't we approve a recreation committee or something like that, or a subcommittee to try to help with programs or something like that? So I just wanted to know those that are at the table for this recreation department committee, did they have any input? Did they say anything about it?
Are you talking about the Recreation Commission or the Citizens Advisory Committee that was appointed, I think, in July last year?
All of them.
Well, virtually no one has stepped up and applied to be on the Recreation Commission. There's nobody to talk to. As far as the Recreation Citizens Advisory Committee, I'll let Councilman Williamson respond to that.
Okay.
I'm unaware of what the mayor just referred to, the Recreation Advisory. I'm sorry. I'm unaware of that.
Okay, so what Councilwoman Lawler is asking if you talk with any of the recreation committees, advisory committees, et cetera. So have you?
We've talked to the department head and the city manager and the different partners. I have not been part of any conversation with any recreation advisory committee.
Okay, so Councilwoman Lawler, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Councilwoman Spicer.
Thank you. So then the cost for this program the city will be providing the funding. Is that correct? You're asking, or they're requesting the city to provide the funding.
So actually what they're requesting is half of the funding, because
which would be
$20,000. Half of the funding, because we don't want the city to foot the bill for the whole thing. We are working with other partners to provide the funding to help fill that gap. We estimate the program to be over 40,000, and if it grows, it'll have to scale up. But we're working with different partners around the city and county to pull together resources to get this off. The city contracting for this amount would guarantee that everybody has access to this program.
So then would this money be taken from the recreation budget, the general fund, or?
The money would be taken from the reserves of the recreation fund.
How much are those reserves, Mr. McClary?
We currently have, we closed out this past fiscal year with about 27,000 in surplus funds. I believe over the past several years, the recreation fund has built up available reserves of about 142,000.
So then how did this come about? How'd the conversation start? Did Larry approach someone? Did someone approach Larry? How did this conversation start with the YMCA and kids and stuff joining together to provide this service for the Albion community?
So this was actually born out of the Albion Homer United Way. So what happened is at the end of March, when everything started to shut down, Jill Hind, who is the executive director for the Battle Creek Family YMCA, who's also an Albion resident. She lives in your precinct, Ms. Spicer. She approached the Albion Homer United Way and she said, I have grant dollars. Do you guys have some grant dollars to match? We want to do relief camps in Albion. And we weren't going to do them at Kids and Stuff. We actually were originally going to do them at Isman House because of the open space. But then Audrey piped up and said, hey, I have a building and it has to be closed, but it wouldn't have to be if you have your camp here. So they did their relief camp, and then it kind of ended because the need wasn't at that point wasn't needed in mid-April. So then as summer stuff started coming around and we realized that Battle Creek Public Recreation wasn't going to be able to, and neither was Marshall, and we realized Albion Recreation wasn't going to be able to open, she reached out to me and Albion Homer United Way and said, hey, are we interested in doing this again? Audrey immediately said, yes, let's do it and let's make it available. And then we took a different angle. It's no longer a relief camp for workers. This is recreation services for kids this summer that is allowable under the governor's order. And so so I brought it to Darwin, and Darwin coordinated a meeting with Larry and Audrey and myself. I was just there as a council person who was interested in making sure we had recreation programs this summer. And that's how it kind of came out. And then Jill did the one pager to pull together for council for this evening. And I believe she's had a conversation we've had several conversations about this in the last couple of weeks. So that's how it came about.
Okay, I thought maybe
Larry did express his support for this on several of those occasions. Larry did express his support for this on several occasions.
Okay. Didn't you used to work at the YMCA, Counselor?
I do not work at the YMCA. Nope.
You did?
No, I did not work at the YMCA. In the early days of my company, I contracted with them, but I have not been under contract with them for a long time now.
Okay, so how then, how many kids do you, I have questions, obviously.
Sure.
Kids you expect, given this COVID thing? So are you thinking parents are gonna send their kids there, and what type of precautions are gonna be taken with regard to the, you know, the distancing requirement that's probably gonna be in place forever? So how do they plan to handle that?
So they have an incredibly comprehensive plan for that. So, and they've done this throughout the COVID-19 crisis. So kids are offered masks. Parents are offered to enforce that their children make them wear them. As you know, these are younger kids. Social distancing is not a thing for them, but they do activities that keep them mostly apart. They do the temperature checks at the door. You're not allowed to come back for 3 days if you have an elevated fever or a symptom of a fever. Or if a parent, that's the other thing, they were checking parents and kids. They weren't just checking kids. They were making sure there was a layer there. And to our knowledge, at the Battle Creek Family Y sites, they have 4 of them in Battle Creek, and they had 1 of them in Albion. They had not had any outbreak known to them of COVID-19. In fact, they have put in extreme cleaning measures and sanitization efforts. So they are following the governor's guidelines, and all adults, all mentors who are there, who are also certified, have background checks and child neglect and abuse checks done. They also are required to wear a mask and gloves. So they are delivering the program in a very safe environment for the children. And and again, I just want to reiterate, they have been doing this for a few months now with little to no worry for spread or outbreak. And so they have been doing this.
Okay, so how many kids and what age groups?
So they built the format for 30 to 40 to start, and it can scale up to 80 and for the time being. Peapods hits about 25 to 30 kids. And so that's kind of the group we were going to try to reach. But they can scale up to 80, and it's pre-K through 5. If you're potty trained, you can go. If you're not potty trained, stay home.
Okay, so how is notification going to be handled? Because, I want to make sure that all of Albion's children, at least have noticed that of the existence of this thing. I'd hate to see all kids from precinct 5 and 6 and none from 1 and 2. So you know what I'm getting at? So tell me how you plan to handle that.
Absolutely. So yes. So as soon as council approves, if we approve tonight, there is actually a registration form and flyer. I can't remember if it was included in the packet, but there's a registration form and flyer that will show you that it's free. We plan on not only posting that in social media, but we are going to hand it out with the lunches at the schools, because that reaches a ton of children in town. And we are reaching out to key individuals at churches and different organizations, Ministerial Alliance, the past leadership of the Ministerial Alliance, other known names who like to recruit, Marquetta Frost and such. So as soon, we've been hesitant to put these forms out there because we didn't want to put cart before the horse. But as soon as council does this tonight, I'm sure you'll get a thank you from the Battle Creek Family Y and Commitment to Serve, and then you'll see these flyers and things elsewhere.
I have a point of order.
Go ahead, Councilman Lawler.
Okay. Thank you. I don't think we can vote on anything because when I had an agenda item, I could not make a decision, which was okay. But I just want to make sure that we're not supposed to be voting on anything. I thought this was just only going to be a discussion.
Well, that was raised by a speaker, but he was ill-informed because this came out over the weekend. This did not come out this morning. Is that correct, Councilman Williamson? Mr. McCleary, it's been on the revised agenda, I think, since Saturday.
Friday,
okay.
Okie doke.
No problem.
Okay.
Okay, so I have a couple questions for you. I'm looking at the
I have one final question.
I'll ask my question, then I'll come back to you. Okay, so the documentation says that in some places it calls it a donation, some places it calls it a contract. What is it?
It's a contracted service.
Okay. And it's childcare or it's not childcare?
So it's a recreation camp, but it can double as childcare. There is a childcare component to it, right? Because they're going there for a full day and they're going to need care. So food, drinks, snacks, things to do. Those are all things that people go to camp for. Notoriously, people send kids to summer camp while they work, which would also be daycare. So I wouldn't want to split hairs about daycare, but in order to make this operational, it has to be considered a recreational camp. I know that the term gets intertwined in the document. I think that we could probably fix that document up to make sure it's recreational camp. But I mean, this is essentially for people, you know, people will go back to work and they'll drop their kid off in the morning and pick them up in the afternoon.
And this year, this is needed and it wasn't needed last year because there aren't any camps. That's the point?
So the reason it wasn't needed last year is because Albion Recreation runs the Peapods program throughout the summer. So the Recreation Department has usually a certain slate of summer programming that they are not able to offer and will not be able to offer for the foreseeable future because of the pandemic. So because of the WISE ability to have done the relief camps early on in Albion, they are continued allowed to run camps in Albion throughout this pandemic when Albion Recreation cannot. So it made sense that Albion Recreation would contract with some sort of dollars to help make this program happen in lieu of them being able to operate it.
I have something, please.
Go ahead, Councilwoman Lawler.
Okay, thank you. So the deadline to put anything on the agenda is Wednesday. Am I correct?
No, we determined that it was noon. To put it on the agenda was noon the day of, and I'll defer to the city attorney.
Can you help me, Colin, please?
Sorry, yes, I'm trying to jockey my mute button here. So there's two provisions that apply here. Our city charter says that the mayor, council members, or administration can add items to the agenda at any time before noon on the day of the council meeting. Our council rules say agenda items added to the agenda after 12 on the Wednesday prior to the council meeting shall generally be considered only for discussion at that meeting if the item is a matter of urgency or emergency due to circumstances arising after the Wednesday preceding the meeting. So our council rules say generally if it's added after the Wednesday, it should be considered for discussion. However, our charter does allow for items to be added up till noon the day of the meeting.
Okay. So can you just, because I don't have all the executive orders confirmed and are ingrained in my brain, is not that I doubt Councilman Williamson, but is that a correct statement that there are no other people that could provide this service other than the YMCA under the current status of emergency, simply because they provided this type of service during this emergency? Is that correct?
Correct.
I'm asking the city attorney. Thank you.
Oh.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Okay, so part of the premise here is that we don't need to do any kind of bids or anything, even though it's a $20,000 contract for services, because nobody else can do this but the YMCA. And I just want to validate or verify that that's accurate. If that's accurate, that's fine.
Yeah, so we have an ordinance that obviously sets out a bidding process. And generally, if we had a contract that exceeded our $5,000 threshold, we would need to do a bid. I would say though, and I don't have any knowledge about whether or not they are the only entity that can provide these services or not. I'll just for argument's sake, let's say that they are. That would make the bidding process moot, and you would be able to proceed without doing competitive bids.
Well, if our threshold's 5,000 and this is 20,000, what do we have to do to get confirmation that they're the only folks that can do this and we don't need to do the bid process?
You know, that would be something that I think we would have to rely on those that are submitting it to us to provide information that they're the only ones.
Okay, so what I think it boils down to is why don't you explain it to Councilman Williamson? Basically, if I understand correctly, you're saying that nobody else could go into operation doing this, but they can because they did something similar to this during this emergency.
Correct. So there are other people who can explain this much more eloquently, but I'm gonna explain it as quickly and as succinctly as I can. Battle Creek Recreation is closed. Albion Recreation is closed. Marshall Recreation is closed. There are no other recreation departments that are operational in Albion that are going to be able to do, or in Albion or in the county, that are going to be able to provide this programming. In addition to, almost all of the childcare centers locally are closed, and they are strictly childcare focused under age 5. So this is a recreation service. This meets all of the criteria to not go ahead with bidding. As you know, Mr. Mayor, I usually am a process fool as well, and I want to make sure we follow all processes to a T. But again, as you know, this health crisis has really pushed us to figure out things quickly and do things differently and as efficiently and hopefully within the rules as much as possible. And so I truly believe this project falls within those rules. This is kind of an emergency because we're 2 weeks away from school getting out or virtually getting out, and activities needed for kids. And I think this hits all of the high notes for being legal and able to perform. And I think if you want some type of written statement or assurance from the YMCA, they would most definitely be able to give you that on their ability to do this work. And again,
I'm not questioning their ability to do the work.
And they are doing this work in Battle Creek as well.
Yeah, I'm not questioning their ability to do the work.
Yeah.
I'm just questioning the basis that they're the only people that can do this. And I know that Little Lambs is ready to open up and go back to business, and they take in their program up to age 11. So that's pretty close, same thing. I'm not opposed to this. I'm just trying to make sure we follow the rules. And I got hung up on had some concern when we're talking about making donations, but it's not a donation. It's a contract. And yes, there'll be people there to care for the children, but since childcare is not a city service, as long as we can verify with the executive orders that nobody else can do this unless they were already doing something similar to this, yeah, I can figure out that our recreation department is not operation, nor is Marshall's, probably nor is Ann Arbor's or anybody else's.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Spicer, you had a question, right? Or was it what? Nope.
I have one.
Okay.
I'd like to hear Attorney Harkness before I speak.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes.
So the one thing I wanted to suggest to the council, as a general concept, it is permissible for the city to contract with a private entity to provide services. And the caveat to that being that there's services that the city could otherwise provide themselves. And certainly, I don't think anyone would debate the city's ability to provide recreation services on its own. The one suggestion I would make as it relates to the resolution itself is I would remove the childcare references in there. I think it sounds like a great program, and it's great if they provide that ancillary benefit to people participating in the program. But I don't think for purposes of being cautious of riding that line when dealing with a private entity, I would recommend that we make it that we're just executing a contract for the provision of recreation services. And if they happen to throw in childcare as a benefit, great. But I just wanted to, make that clear that technically it has to be a service that we could otherwise be providing ourselves. So that would just be my one recommendation as it relates to the resolution.
Okay.
Oh, back to
Councilwoman Spicer.
Thank you. So if the funding is coming from the recreation reserve fund, isn't that what you stated, City Manager McCleary?
From the recreation fund reserves, yes.
So then if this was given a green light, then, so I'm assuming we're thinking that recreation is not going to be operational for the rest of the summer, is because if we're thinking of, doing this and taking away the pot, they probably won't be offering anything because there won't be money left? Or is there more money there if they decided to get operational in 2 months or something? So explain that to me, help clarify that for me.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understood the question.
The funding, well, this contract calls for $20,000 in the city. You earlier stated that the monies would be coming from the Recreation Department reserve, correct?
Correct.
So then by that, I'm assuming that you're thinking, and so is the Recreation Director, that no recreation programs will be offered this summer, correct?
At this point, my assumption is that there will be no recreation services provided at least through the month of June.
Okay, so if
Beyond that, I don't know until we hear further from the governor.
okay. So then the Recreation Department could not do, no, never mind.
No, Jeanette,
Okay, go ahead.
I know what you're getting. I know what you're getting.
Councilwoman Lawler is next. She's been waiting patiently.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to postpone this until the council gets a budget of what we gonna do with our $20,000. If this, that will be the best suggestion for me because I want to see what we're spending the $20,000 on. Is that possible, Shane? Please, I know you're frustrated. I see you. I'm sorry.
I don't know if it's my turn to talk yet, so I'll just wait.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. But I'm done, Mayor.
Okay.
I yield.
Councilman Williamson.
Okay, I was going to add, so what Councilwoman Spicer I think is getting at, so we're taking this money out of reserves, which means we're not taking it out of the current operating budget for recreation. So if there was like a miracle and COVID-19 was gone tomorrow or gone on June 30th, there would still be recreation dollars for Larry and the team at the Recreation Department to resume other recreational programs. So these are from reserves. It's like savings almost, right? Like it's money we have not used that we could expend and should expend on recreational services. To Councilwoman Lawler's request, so this program is already over $40,000. We gave an outline budget to council, and it shows you just what services are being provided with that money. Essentially, the city of Albion would only be paying for half of the delivery of the program. So for half of the price, you're getting the full program, and you're getting all of those services listed. So
Point of order, Mayor. Point of order. There's a motion on the table.
Was it seconded?
Yeah, you went straight into something else, so I put it out there on the table.
He was responding to your question, I believe.
Okay, but I did have a motion on the table, sir.
I'm done, Mr. Mayor. You can deal with the motion.
Okay. So there's a motion to postpone voting on this until we have further information. Is that correct, Councilwoman Lawler?
That's however you want to word it. It's fine with me. I just wanted some clarity on what our expenses would be if we decided to go with this.
Well, I want to word it in such a fashion that it means what you want it to mean. So you want to postpone this until we get further information, or is there something else?
Sure, that's okay. Yeah, I'll go with that. That's fine.
Is there support for the motion? Hearing none, Councilwoman Reed. Your motion did not get seconded, Councilwoman Lawler. Councilwoman
Yep,
Reed,
I
you
know.
have your hand up
I
to
got
ask a question.
Okay.
Please state the question. Oh, Mayor,
Yes,
are you calling me because I raised my hand or because
Yes.
there's a question?
I'm calling you because you raised your hand.
Okay. My whole thing is I want something for the kids. And if this is going to be something positive for the children to have to do until they're able to, till this passes over or gets better or gets worse or whatever, the kids need something to do. And if this'll work, I'm for it.
Are there any other comments or questions by council? Okay, so the motion that we're going to vote on is as written, listed on the agenda, which is request approval for resolution 2020-29, a resolution to amend the fiscal year 2020 budget and to authorize the execution of a public services agreement with Battle Creek YMCA and Kids and Stuff Museum to provide for the 2020 Albion Summer Recreation Camp Program. That's what the motion is.
One question.
Councilwoman Spider.
The time frame was from what date to what date was that?
1 June to 31 July, I believe.
I'm sorry, what was it?
July?
I
Yep,
didn't.
June 1st to 31 July.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Ms. Domingo, read the roll, please.
Councilmember Smith,
No.
Lawler,
No.
Spicer,
Yes.
Williamson,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
and Mayor Atkinson.
Yes. Okay, future agenda items. Councilwoman Clark.
So the last meeting we discussed I'm trying to put it in the right words, but we discussed hiring. There was something on there about hiring and how, and I asked the question about what criteria will we use to determine if you hired a candidate for a position, and there was some conversation mentioned about favoritism and things like that. And I understand that the NAACP has gotten wind of someone that has just recently been hired and is backing maybe a prejudicial type of hiring process or something like that. So what I would like to know is, if this is possible, I would like to know how many people apply for this job and what the criteria was to decide who to hire.
But we have a discussion.
For code enforcement.
We're doing future agenda items, so you want to address this issue at the next council meeting.
Yes.
And we can have a discussion on the hiring process for this position.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Well, if the, whoops.
Councilwoman Spicer? I was looking down, I was writing. Councilwoman Spicer.
Has the person actually been hired, and will they be started by our next meeting? Because I guess that's a question. That's my question.
That's for the city manager.
There has been an offer made to the top candidate. We are not entirely sure as to when that person will be starting, because of course, having the pre-employment physicals done is an issue right now under the governor's executive orders. As far as I understand, right now, only first responders, emergency workers are able to have pre-employment physicals done, but we are following up on that to confirm whether or not we can get those done now for non-emergency workers. But we would like that person to start as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Clark, did you have any other agenda items?
No.
Okay. Ms. Spicer, do you have agenda items?
I think that the resolution tonight covered the application for first, second, third Hartwell, and wild, but I guess for a future agenda item, that resolution covered applying for the grant. I'd like us to, a resolution, basically something in writing, committing us to that effort. Attorney Harkness, can you handle that? He's on mute.
Sorry. I'm on. Yes, you want a resolution as it relates to the first, second, third, Hartwell.
And Wild.
Committing you to that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Councilman Williamson.
So I've attempted to reach out to you all about a study session for adult use recreational marijuana, the situation. We had a discussion about policy at the last meeting, and I and a couple other council members wanted to call a study session. Unfortunately, probably, I'm assuming by no intentional reasoning, we could not find a day where most of council could get together for a study session. I would like to do that, at least have a conversation about it at the next meeting. I've been out gathering the facts and figures and trying to figure stuff out, but can we at least for the next meeting get a conversation about adult use recreational marijuana, all of the different terms related to that, you know, provisioning, grow, processing, whatever all those things are. We need to have that conversation, and I'm hoping that we can at least have an initial conversation and then set up a study session with EDC as a result of that conversation. So just please put it on the agenda as a discussion item.
And when I went in and answered the doodle poll on that, there were at least 4, if not 5 people that had responded, I thought, Thursday of this week. So that was at least a quorum.
That's what I thought too. I had the same conversation with the city manager, but he confirmed that there were not enough to have the conversation. So maybe, and if you all are open, we don't have to put it on the next agenda. We could schedule a study session instead.
So Councilwoman Williamson, what about an hour prior to our next meeting? I mean,
that would be fantastic if we could do that.
And then, yeah, because I'm sure the guy from the farms would like to be present and present his, you know, opinions. And yeah, absolutely. And the money and he spent and be losing. And so that's an idea. That's a thought.
Well, if you're open to calling that with me, Councilwoman Spicer, we can do that for the hour before the meeting, and then we don't have to have it as an agenda item.
I support it, yes.
You have other agenda items? Councilman Williamson.
I'd like one put on.
Just a minute, Ms. Reed.
Okay.
Councilman Williamson, did you have other agenda items? No. Okay. Councilwoman Reed.
I'd like to have some information about what do you do about the houses in Albion that's not being lived in by people? I've seen houses and the cats from the are beginning to come, and the groundhogs are coming. And once you have a house that sits for a while and these start coming, pretty soon that house is demolished and is ready to be taken down. So we've got some houses around Albion that's like that. Are the people notified any that their houses need to either sell them or something and not just let them sit there and deteriorate? Is there any program for that or any law about that?
Okay, so I would ask the city attorney to talk with our city manager. The topic would be, what are policy options for abandoned houses?
Yes.
And we'll put that on the next meeting. Okay. Councilman Smith, do you have future agenda items? Ms. Clark?
I was just saying, and also add business buildings also to that for both. Because the one in my district, Burger King, is not being kept up either. So.
All right. So I'm going to ask the city manager, how many people did respond on that doodle poll? Do you recall? I really thought there was 4. I was expecting to show up to have that meeting scheduled this week.
A a number of those were staff members, Your Honor.
Ah, okay. We also need to have a study session for the city manager, adjustment of the city manager's goals, and a special meeting. Well, we could do it one of two ways. We can have a special meeting for the principles of effective council manager, because out of that, we have to approve something, or we can have a study session, get the draft of it, and then put it on the next agenda. So what is the preference of council, whether to have a study session to work on the principles of effective council manager and then put that on the agenda for a final vote, or do we want to call a special meeting? It's going to take several hours.
Several hours. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Study session.
Okay. So Mr. McCleary, oh, Councilman Smith.
I would recommend a Saturday morning study session.
And I'm kind of thinking it doesn't matter since none of us are going off to work, but that's fine. Okay. So I'll work with the city manager and the city clerk to get a doodle poll set out with some specific dates. And then if you would please respond back to that. Same thing for the adjustment of the city manager goals. We need to do that here fairly soon. Okay. Any other future agenda items by council?
I have one, please.
Councilwoman Lawler.
Okay, thank you. I have been made aware of that we have had some cutbacks in our in some of our entities where people have been laid off or and positions have been deleted and things like that. Is there a current and I don't know if I can ask this, you know, y'all can help me out with it. I won't get offended, but are we able to ask what positions was deleted and how many people have been laid off and what is the new budget for these entities? Am I able to ask that?
Sure, you can ask. I don't know what answer you're going to get.
Okay.
The only organization that I'm aware of that's furloughed and reduced hours of various employees is the EDC. Is that the organization you're referring to?
It is, but is the oh goodness. So is wages decreased for everyone?
I believe so, but that's
Okay.
a question for the EDC.
Okay, well maybe I can put that on the agenda. I don't mean no harm to nobody, but I just wanted to know, you know, is there gonna be pays deducted from some of our employees and how is it affecting them? I know it has to have a great deal of effect, but I'm just concerned. That's all.
As far as the city is concerned, I have a meeting with my finance team tomorrow afternoon to talk about this very issue.
Okay.
We have been waiting for guidance from the state as far as the impact on state revenue sharing, Act 51 funds. So there was a meeting today with the Department of Treasury and the Department of Transportation that discussed some of the results of the revenue estimating conference that took place last Friday. They're going to be issuing some guidance within the next week or two based on that revenue estimating conference. They did throw out some information that gives us a little better idea on what we could be anticipating in terms of revenue losses from some of those sources. So I will be discussing that with our finance team tomorrow at our meeting. Because we do have to start planning for how we're going to address our revenue shortfalls and getting some good estimates as to what we're looking at in terms of revenue losses. So we are having those discussions. Nothing I can tell you as far as the city is concerned, nothing is off the table. We have to look at everything. We have to look strategically. Of course, the majority of our costs are personnel costs. So whatever reductions we are looking at least a portion of that solution is going to have to be in terms of personnel. So I'm hoping I have some additional information and insight from our finance team tomorrow, but we may not have a good picture of the financial situation for the next week or two when the state comes out with some additional guidance. As far as the EDC, my understanding is that most of their staff is going to be engaging in some type of work share program, either through the state of Michigan's work share or through their own arrangements. One employee is being laid off. So I'm not aware that there's any reduction in pay rates, but there is going to be, from what I understand, a reduction in work hours with a lot of those employees, with one employee being laid off entirely.
Okay, any other comments, future agenda items? If not, we'll go to public comments.
Can I ask for privilege? I have something going on my street, and it's Sheridan Township fire trucks here. So
Okay.
Can I call a privilege, please?
Granted.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Public comments.
Hold on just a moment, Mayor.
I can see that Mr. Goodman's still with us.
Mr. Goodman?
Yes, sir. Whoops. Yes, sir.
You have comments?
I've been sitting here now for, I don't know, 2 hours and 36 minutes or so. And I hear a lot of conversation about the city needs employment, the city needs revenue, the city needs things. And I'm sitting here with a piece of property on Elliott Street that can generate jobs, that can generate good paying jobs. And if my licenses don't run out and get revoked, ultimately all that can happen, but it can't happen. It won't happen as a medical facility because it doesn't make economic sense to do that. Now, I can tell you for the 5th time or so that there's anywhere from 50 to 125 jobs, some part-time jobs, some full-time jobs, but good paying jobs that will be available in that grow and processing facility. If the city needs this, which it does, the city ought to help my family and my company put a resolution together to change from medical to recreational, because quite frankly, the state of Michigan has changed. This whole recreational cannabis thing has changed the complexion of the cannabis business. There's no possible way that I could make economic sense out of building out this property. There's 110,000 square feet of facility over there on Elliott Street, and make any kind of economic sense unless the property is switched over to recreational. I didn't do that. The state of Michigan did that. In its wisdom, it brought in recreational to the city, or to the state, and consequently to the city. If I can't get a resolution through, you can study it all day long. I'm just telling you that unless it happens, the property will go back to an industrial piece of property at whatever it's worth as an industrial piece of property. Because I can't get anybody to talk to me about partnering with me. I can't get anybody to, I've looked for people to buy it as a medical facility. I can't even get anybody to talk to me about it. It's unfortunate that change happens, but change happens all the time. It happens every day. COVID-19 has created a huge change in the way everybody lives. Well, recreational cannabis has changed the way the cannabis business functions right now. So, I mean, I can sit in on study sessions. I'm happy to do it.
Mr. Goodman,
my licenses are running out.
Mr. Goodman, your time is up. I apologize.
Just remind him there's a study session in 2 weeks at 6 p.m. where he can have lots more time to speak.
Okay.
Do we have any other comments this evening?
Mr. Anderson, did you have a comment?
Hi, just a quick thank you for approving the public hearing on renaming that portion of Hanna Street that resides within the college campus. I appreciate all the points that have been made. And if anybody has any questions over the next couple of weeks as we wait for that public hearing, please let me know. I'd be glad to work with you on any kind of solutions that make this more possible and a win-win for everybody. But thank you very much for the thoughtful conversation today.
Do we have any other public speakers tonight? Mr. McCleary?
I believe Mr. Brown.
Yes, we do, Your Honor. We have Sonia. Did you have comments?
I did, thank you. I just wanted to first of all say that I understand the vote on the Clark Street funding, the city's match. But I understand the rationale behind what's being done. I was not distracted in August of 2019, let me say that, because I asked very specific questions and I was given very specific answers. I even asked if there had been any negotiations with Knopf that they would hire a certain percentage of Albion's residents, so at least we could recoup employee taxes at 100% and get some money back for that. But I am happy to hear that you're proceeding with a grant to cover those streets that we had previously designated as priority minor street repairs for 2020. Also wanted to mention the EDC. I read that there's a 60% furlough of the remaining staff. And I'm curious, I know the director's position is split between the city and ARC at 50%. And if that furlough pertains to the director's position, just make sure the city that it's a fair split as the salary comes out of both. Lastly, I wanted to say that, most of the city supports recreational marijuana. And I'm glad the council scheduled a work session for it. But I hope it's something that you seriously consider. Thank you.
Anybody else, Mr. McCleary?
Yes, Garrett Brown.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, very quickly, a couple of things. So one, I want to make sure, because I was kind of frustrated by it. The last council meeting, a vote was not allowed on Councilmember Lawler's thing because it came in after, but then today there was some wiggle room around that. And I want to make sure, because when I heard from Attorney Harkness, it wasn't a definitive, clear response to her question. The charter allows things to be placed on the agenda before noon, the day of the meeting. But that doesn't mean the council, through its rules, can't say, hey, we are going to treat things coming in that late as a discussion. Especially, and the thing about it is, if I was on council, I would have probably moved to table it to the next meeting, or had a special meeting for it. I would still support it because I think kids do need activities. But again, there needs to be some consistency and fairness there, because that's $20,000 out of the city's coffers. And then I heard some things that gave me some concern about ethical things as well, depending on the board, some of the council members' boards affiliations. The other question, number 2, is, can someone please just clarify, is the street naming an honorary thing like we did for, again, Mr. Gant or Joe McCracklin? There's just an honorary sign, or is this actually a full street name change? Okay, so can someone please clarify that? Also, the attorney said something about the charging decision relative to former Councilmember Brown. Can he clarify, is it possible for the attorney to come back and say, I don't recommend the council charge? And if he does do that, is the city out of the money if he comes back and his charging decision is to advise the city not to do that? Because he said charging decision, but that wasn't, I caught that. So then the last thing I would say is, right now, at national level, we're seeing a president who is railing against his predecessor. And it's unfortunate that I think that that's what's happening right now on the council, especially when it comes to the GovHR thing and the bidding conversation. I appreciate the attorney explaining that it doesn't have to go to the lowest bidder, but because again, I think emotions get in the way and people don't know the ordinances or charter and they make assumptions. And the same firm that the mayor is consistently trying to beat up on is the same firm that selected one of our former mayors as a finalist in a city manager search in Royal Oak. So it's not a GovHR's issue. There was a 6-1 council split on, or a decision on that hiring decision. So I think we need to be forward looking, and hopefully in November we can make some changes. But I think that again, and even with that, that presents a challenge to the council's commitment to doing first, second, and third and Wild Streets. If we get a council that's not going to stick with that commitment, you've basically pushed that off to the future.
Mr. Brown, your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Your Honor, one more, Commissioner Tompkins.
Welcome, Commissioner.
Well, good evening, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Well, hey, you didn't think you were going to get away with a meeting without hearing from me, did you? Absolutely. Well, good evening, everybody. Gary Tompkins, your county commissioner. I'll be very brief this evening. First and foremost, our county offices are still remain closed through May 28th. Well, we are in the process of putting together our readiness and preparedness plan moving forward to the reopening of our building, and certainly are welcoming our employees back. That'll be voted on this Thursday night. At our May 7th meeting, we heard an update from the Parks millage, from the Parks and Recreation Committee regarding the Parks millage that was slated for August 2020. Some discussion was had in their meeting regarding whether they wanted to pursue going forward because of the uncertainty, certainly with the economy and whatnot going. It was decided to push forward at a 5-1 vote, so that you will still see on the ballot for the August 2020 election. As most of you are very aware of, and it's been widely publicized, obviously the County Land Bank Authority received a significant amount of money towards 32 environmental site assessments countywide, which include obviously the former Gale Industries and Brown Welding sites in Albion, which is great news for the continuation of the cleanup of those sites. Quick basis on the COVID update. As of today at 4 p.m., County has 307 cases, confirmed cases with 18 deaths. We have started to see a slowing down, if you will, not quite an acceleration of cases. So there is some good news on the front, but I guess you're always cautiously optimistic. I attended the County Board of Health meeting, I believe last week. This is regarding specifically regarding the testing aspect. The County Health Department has created a task force to aggressively get testing sites in place in Albion and the surrounding areas, as they were very much, they recognize the fact that the east side of the county certainly needs that and is void of that. So I will keep you abreast of that as we go. So hopefully we'll be able to get that in place very quickly. Real quickly, my monthly newsletter, if you folks are interested, anybody out there that's listening, obviously hard copies are not out there at this point in time because trying to respect everybody's distancing. If you're interested by email, contact me at tompkinscc7@gmail.com and I'll get you signed up for it. And then finally, this week, as most of you are quite aware of, this is EMS week, which honors the work that's done by our paramedics and emergency medical technicians around the country. Obviously, in this current health crisis has underlined just how important the role of EMS workers have been during this time. So again, we just want to take that opportunity not only to appreciate everything they do for us, not only this week, but every day, 365 days. So great job to each and every one of them. And then finally, I hope all of you continue to be well, you stay safe, and hopefully at one point we're one day closer to getting through with this and I can see everybody's faces in person and have some level of normalcy hopefully back. So again, positivity always prevails, and it's great being with you folks each time you meet. So with that being said, all of you have a great evening. All right. Thank you. Take care.
Thanks, Commissioner. Okay, next up, city manager's report.
Your Honor, the city council received the city manager's report. Unless you have specific questions on any items in the report, I will refrain from going through the whole report tonight. A copy of the report will be on the city manager's web page for anybody to read in the morning.
Okay. Any council member have a question about the city manager's report for the city manager? Seeing none, mayor, council member comments. Councilman Smith.
Yes, we, meeting after meeting, we keep receiving financial statements on the back of the packet with no explanation of what any of it is about. And though I really don't want to see the meetings get drug out any longer, if we are going to continue to receive those, it would be nice to get an explanation of what we're looking at each meeting. Mr. McCleary, I do appreciate the work you do on your report, but it would be nice to receive the city manager's report a little more than a half hour before the meeting. So if we could expedite that a little in the future, it would be appreciated. That's all I have. I yield.
Your Honor, if I could just give clarification to the financial reports. The financial report is a revenue and expenditure report that's provided to council as required by the city charter. The report is only required to be submitted to council quarterly, but our finance department provides them monthly to the council. So it is in response to a requirement of the city charter. The council is not required to take any action on those reports. It's simply for your information. And it provides you with a snapshot in time for the previous month where we are at with revenues and expenditures.
I kind of echo what Councilor Smith said. And so I will add that to the next council agenda to have you walk us through that, or if you want Mr. Me to do it, or whoever you choose, so that we can ask some questions and have a better understanding. Councilwoman Clark.
Just as a suggestion to, again, so the meetings don't have to be so much longer. In the discussion, maybe you could just highlight the areas that have changed or that would stand out, that or something that you wanted to tell us. If the rest of them are still the same, you know, it wouldn't be nothing to discuss, but like if you just would highlight the areas, so when we look at it, we'll know what we're looking at, what changes and why you're discussing it.
Yes.
Visualize.
Good evening. So the first thing I want to say is thank you. Oh, I'm unmuted. I did that thing that everyone does every once in a while. Okay. The first thing I want to say is thank you to the council tonight. We will be the council that made sure that kids and families had programs this summer in the middle of a global health crisis. And I think that's a really big deal and a feather in our cap. So again, thank you to all of you for the support on that measure. Secondly, I wanted to add, I echo a little bit what Councilperson Smith said about having some explanation. And I think that actually goes across the entire packet. So one of the things I like about the council packet, at least under City Manager McCleary's leadership, is that there's these really nice briefs put together that say, this is how it got here, this is what we've done, here's why it's before you tonight, and here are the different ways you can do it. And every once in a while, we get a recommendation to say, this might be the best way forward. I like that. Now and that's great. But I think what I've struggled with over the last few months is that sometimes we have council packets that have tons of discussion items on them that are on the agenda, but then they don't have a lot of background knowledge or just a blurb about why we're talking about it. Like I had idea what we were talking about as it related to citizen versus council member and talking. Like it would have been nice to have a blurb that says, this is why we're bringing it up. This is what I want to accomplish with it. So, and maybe we can add this as a agenda item for the next council meeting, but maybe we just need to put together a memo format for when we add things to the agenda in our rules so that we can actually understand what we're going to talk about. I think some of the decisions that we've made and then had to remake in the past are because we don't have a lot of information for us when we make those decisions on the night of council, because we have no information prior to the meeting. So again, in the interest of providing more information to folks before we get here, I think it'd be nice to establish a rule and with maybe a little form for us to submit our agenda items. That way the city can collect the information that we need to make an informed decision. So I just want to put that out in the atmosphere. I may shoot Dave an email, Mr. Mayor Atchison an email with that as an agenda, as a discussion point for next week as well. But I wanted to say, I think having more information in the packet amongst all items would be very helpful before coming to a council meeting. So with that, thank you again for making sure that kids have opportunity this summer, and have a great night. I yield.
Councilwoman Reed, did you have a comment?
Nope.
Okay. Councilwoman Spicer?
No, thank you.
Okay. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Support.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Adjourned.
Good night. Good night.